rolling.
Is this out of the way here?
Yes. Yes. So just make sure that everything looks fine and it's the recording sound.
All right.
You still want that paper still showing? You still want that?
Then it needs to be the complete.
My cheat sheet.
Yeah.
Do it.
I think that looks fine.
Up more. Towards me.
I'm going to show you.
Okay.
You can see.
More, Kitty. There you
Cool,
go.
cool.
Like.
All right, and we're rolling.
Well, Dave, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for agreeing to the interview with me today. And
My pleasure.
I'd love to just know, what are you working on these days, and how are you going about doing that?
Wow, what am I working on? I have an African art business that makes me absolutely no money, but it's fun. And what I'm more into than anything is trying to help others find their way, like I have in life. So there's a lot of little organizations, like I was telling you earlier about Construction Hope. Teaches people the trades, and I get really excited about it because learning the trade was the beginning of the Dave Stewart story.
Yeah. And, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you're helping people find that and your thoughts on how to do that best.
Well, for me, I had to hit a bottom in prison. It was my 4th time. And when I hit that bottom, and I really had nowhere to go but up, I waved the white flag, asked for help. I got medication, and then, because I had depression, and then the medication helped me, but just the idea. Hold on, can you stop there? I got these teeth because I'm supposed to be getting implants.
Oh, yeah.
They're temporaries. I put them in, and they're not working. They're making me really have a hard time talking. Okay.
All right, yeah.
So are we all right?
Yep.
Okay. Let's go. Mark just asked me that question again.
Yeah, maybe just stepping back, why is education and training important in prison?
Yeah, for me, that was the beginning for me. I didn't believe in myself. I was suicidal. I was at the end of my rope. I hit a bottom, and for me, it took medication to begin with to keep, to help me not go down those negative paths in my mind. So that was depression medication. But about the same time, I was given the opportunity to go into a vocational education program, and it was computer-aided drafting, but it could have been anything. Within a couple weeks of being in the program, I realized I was onto something. I was changing, and I was looking at a different outcome. And that drafting program became my source of freedom. I became mentally free, and that was an amazing thing to have in prison. I'd never been mentally free before, and here I was locked up. But I was on my way somewhere, and I was enjoying every minute of it. That's what I couldn't believe.
Wow, that's incredible. This concept of mental freedom.
Yes, and you know what? There's been times since then that I've lost that mental freedom, but that is a great thing to discover when you discover how to be free wherever you're at. And you can be happy wherever you're at, and you can be successful wherever you're at.
And what's behind that? Is that hope? Is that believing in a future? Feeling you can be good at something? What was that?
A little bit of all that. The hope comes from knowing that things can be different. That you're not a victim. You are now. You have no excuses. You have no way to blame for your situation. Now you're taking matters into your own hands. And what a great feeling it is to know that you are in charge. And from that point on, you become a stronger and courageous person.
Do you think you would be where you are today if you didn't do any of these vocational or training programs?
No, not at all. In fact, something had to give. I had to learn something. I had to have some sort of education to change my life. It was part of the overall program of changing, transforming. I had to realize that I didn't need methamphetamine to be happy. That was a big deal. So actually the medication in that sense was the beginning, because I was a positive, happy person waiting to happen. But you had to get rid of this ingredient of negativity. And the medication gave me the opportunity to slowly change and climb out of that negativity. And the education program came along about the same time. And the combination of those two things made me a dynamo. I was kicking ass in prison.
Yeah. What does that mean, kicking ass in prison?
I couldn't get up. I'd get up in the morning and I would go to school and be on the computer and creating, designing things, you know. I would design this table, but once I learned how to make this table, I'd figure out how to make it better. And so the same, you know, those things, that's an amazing feeling. You know, you can change things. You can change your life the same way. And so I was doing it all at once. And, you know, it was great to be in tune with the universe.
Yeah.
That's how it was. And so I spent the last few years in prison drafting and having a blast until they put me into a drug program. I didn't want to go to the drug program, but my mind was, I was like, okay, I got to do this, so I'm going to make the most of it. Well, the drafting certainly came in handy because it made me realize that no matter what I'm going to do, I'm going to give it my best and probably be okay at it, be good at it. So the same things that I learned in drafting, I was able to take to the street with me. I wanted to be a drafter. I thought, well, I'll be a drafter and see where that takes me, you know. But that's not what happened. I had an opportunity to work with my family, and I created Dave's Killer Bread using the same principles.
Were there any baking programs on the inside?
There's people baking. I mean, most prisons have like a bakery, and, you know, kitchens and bakeries. I never really got off on the baking that much. It wasn't. I didn't really want to be a baker, but being a product designer, on the other hand, is a different thing, and that was my opportunity, was baking. So I got out. My brother and I discussed, you know, we got to make bread. We got to beat. I'm David and they're Goliath. You know, there's these big bakeries out there, and they can crush you. The only thing you can beat them at is your passion and your, you know, your smallness gives you advantages, but you have to take advantage of those opportunities. And we were able to do that, get a head start before they got their hands on the recipes.
And just to come back to this idea of rehabilitation, what would you say your philosophy is on education, training, and rehabilitation programs in prison?
From the time that I had a moment in prison, when I realized I was more capable than I thought, which was due to a vocational training program, I realized that there had to be a lot more people that could benefit from that. And in my mind, it was never going to be the government that was going to make it happen. The government kind of screws stuff up. And people, also, I didn't feel like the taxpayers necessarily would want to pay for it. I kind of thought we need to somehow get more education in the prison. in the prisons, and we need to give it to the people who are ready for it. It can really change things.
Yeah. And, you know, about 50% of people don't have access to education and training programs. Some of the latest statistics show in prison.
I would guess it was more than that, but
Yeah. And
it's worse than that, yeah. It was, when I was in there wasn't a whole lot of opportunities.
yeah. What do you think states and the federal government could do differently, or the private sector differently, to get more opportunities into people?
I really do think that it has to start with the private sector, and it has to start with passionate people who really want to make a difference. And so I feel like I don't really know the mechanism to do it. What I'm hearing is that you do have the mechanism, and you have that part figured out. My ideas are just that the more people are touched by programs like that, that have an opportunity and are ready for these programs and take advantage of them, each person each transformation is exponential.
Yeah.
It makes a difference in so many ways. When somebody becomes transformed from a bad to a good person, it's like you're losing one negative force, you're gaining this amazingly positive force that changes the business that he works for, she works for, the business, the family, the community, the world. I mean, it's phenomenal. Look what I did.
Yeah.
I went to work, created bread. Look at all the people that benefited, all the employees.
I'm one of them. I love your bread.
There's the product itself, and then there's the people whose lives were changed because they did the work, but the opportunity was there.
Yeah. And that really goes to the power of entrepreneurship as well.
Entrepreneurship is great, but not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur.
No.
And that's why we need those vocational training programs. I was happy before I was an entrepreneur. That's a good point. That's an important point. I was successful in my mind because I already was way better than I thought I was, and that was a great feeling.
Yeah. Now, when we're looking at education and training programs in prison, it seems like there's, kind of a spectrum that people think of what prison should do in society, between retribution on the one hand, more of a punishment philosophy, and rehabilitation. How do you think those two can best be squared?
Accountability is a great word. A person who, now you need accountability.
Yeah.
Definitely a person. For me, I can only kind of go by my experience. It's not the same for everyone, but for me, I needed to become powerful for myself. And that meant that, in my case, I had to suffer. I did. So I'm not one of these people who says people shouldn't have suffering. I do believe it's a powerful tool. Adversity is a powerful tool for change. Both my transformations I've had in my life that didn't involve drugs began with adversity. So I don't believe that people should be whipped and, punished severely.
Yeah.
But they really need to have time to think about what they're doing. And I don't think that a person, when they first go to prison, is ready for a vocational training program. I think that they have to do a little bit of soul searching and such, and kind of go, man, I'm done with this, and I'm moving on to a different chapter. So I don't know exactly what should happen to people, but I'm all about tough love.
It's an interesting perspective. And in terms of education and training programs, do you think these should lead to specific certificates and degrees that can demonstrate this work?
I think people look, an employer loves degrees, right? Showing that you have done this, you completed this assignment or this major change in your life, that means a lot to an employer. in general just gives you respect, you know. Plus, it's a great thing to be able to, for yourself, you know, to go, well, I completed this degree, I am somebody, you know, and I think it's important to have degrees. I think that a person can actually go without a degree, can take what they have and build on that. It doesn't matter where you're at, you can build on it.
Yeah. One of the ideas we've been considering with Nucleos is a learning transcript that can take the different education, vocational training programs and create a persistent record that can go from what you're doing on the inside to parole and probation, re-entry, and to employment.
And continue, it's like a continuum.
Yeah. Do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah. I think that a person, you don't want to ever abandon somebody at any stage of the game. I think support by the organization, support by whoever is behind your transformation, helping you with your transformation is important. You know, your family is important. If you don't have family, it doesn't mean you can't do it. There's no excuse not to do it. You got to do it for yourself, right? But I think if Nucleus is providing that support along the way and finds a continuum toward that end goal, which is really not the end goal, but in a sense, it's the next stage is getting that job.
Yeah. What advice would you share with people who are currently incarcerated?
Well, I would say, I think it's very important for a person to have humility. Humility is not bowing down and being somebody's bitch. Humility, excuse me if that was bad, if that was poor choice of words, but that's the way they would say it. You know, it's not being less than. It's actually being yourself. And being yourself is the best that you can be. Once you find that person and you let it out and you become vulnerable, vulnerability is a huge deal, then you're vulnerable to opportunity. And that's what happened for me. It was humility, medication, education, and acceptance of myself. And I've been accepting myself with all my faults and failures. I just kind of like, oh man, okay, how many times have I done that? I've failed how many times, but I'm still happy. You know, I can fail today. You know, I can even fail at this interview and go, wow, what did I do wrong? You know what I mean? Let's do it right next time.
It's a little late to fail at the interview. I think we're doing just great, but that's a really powerful perspective. And you know, looking again at these programs, if you were going to design or suggest ideas for education and training and mental wellness support programs in prison, what would you suggest?
Well, where are the opportunities? Where are the opportunities in the world? Okay, one of those opportunities, as a marketer, as a businessman, what do? You look for opportunities in the marketplace. You don't choose the hardest thing in the world. First, the average person in prison isn't going to get out and be an academic. That's just not going to happen. They're going to get out and have an opportunity to contribute as in the trades. More than likely, it's in the trades. The trades, I love the trades. And I get excited about the trades. That people will eventually fill all these positions. Actually, I love that there's a lot of positions to fill.
Yeah.
But the opportunity is to fill these positions and create, our economy will benefit. We have a good economy in that regard. That there are positions to fill, but the more you fill the positions, actually the economy can get better as well, because that makes the company more stronger and more capable. I mean, right now, I can't get an electrician to save my life. It'd take me a month to get an electrician up here.
Yeah.
Shouldn't do that, you know. What does that say? Opportunity. As far as mental awareness, mental wellness, things like that, some people might need medication, I say that. But I think that I myself would just go in there, and if I had a chance, I would go in there and tell them, you know, how it worked for me, how free you can be in prison. You shouldn't be hating on the corrections officers. You shouldn't be hating on the system. That is a waste of energy. You shouldn't be hating on anything, you know. Train your mind to see the positive all the time. Don't blame, don't make excuses. We need to teach people that.
Yeah. That's incredibly powerful.
It is to me.
Yeah. Did you do any cognitive wellness or counseling programs, and what do you think the role of those is
They're great.
in correction?
They're great if you're ready. If you're ready for those programs. And there was many years when I wasn't. I was like, man, what the fuck is this bullshit, right? But I got to a point where there were certain programs like the Franklin reality model. I remember the belief windows, and you know, is that going to meet your needs over time? Simple things like that are very powerful. Wait a minute, step back and think about your decisions. Step back and think. So the cognitive restructuring is powerful. So there's great opportunities in prison to learn about your mind and how you work, but there can always be more.
Yeah. And you know, I understand you think there's a big role for the private sector here. Government is obviously a big part of, you know, policy and what happens in prisons.
You can't circumvent the government.
They've got to be part of a solution to make this better. Do you have any thoughts on what governments, legislatures, policymakers should be doing differently in terms of prisons?
I don't think there's enough understanding of what the taxpayer could be beneficial for, and how rules could be eased up and strengthened to make a better environment, for more conducive environment for growth and change. I think that should be the goal. People should look at, you know, how many opportunities and how much support is there for people in prison, and how do we set up an accountability model so that it works and people build their way into a better life. Legislation could help with that.
Yeah. And what we're doing with Nucleus, we're bringing in more education and training and emotional and social wellness programs, both in person and digitally. What do you think about the role of part in person, part digital solutions?
I think it's great because the more in person you have is great, but honestly, in order to scale something, you probably need to take tools that are scalable. So digital is definitely, if they could let down their guard and let more digital opportunities in there with enough in-person activity to kind of guide that. You know, I did most of my training on my own, even though there was a teacher. He was kind of hands-off, and I just got an opportunity to just go as far as I could on the computer. Hey, it resulted in a better person.
Yeah, that's a fascinating perspective. Back to, you know, what's happening in prisons. Have you seen a change over the years, and are prisons changing their mindset to realize they need more rehabilitation, or is it all talk?
I think they're trying. I haven't been involved in that aspect of things so much because I get so frustrated. It tends to feel weird when I try to talk to prison people. I mean, I like talking to like the prison guards and, you know, things like that. I mean, that's more my speed. But when it gets into politics, I tend to get turned off. So my focus has always been on how can we do this anyway? And so I know if I was the kind of person who could sit in a room and talk politically, I might have a different viewpoint on that. But for me, it's like, look, this is what works. This is what I think works, okay? The rest of you guys, try to make it happen, and if I can inspire the change, I'm with that. But ultimately, it's building programs, I guess, that are no-brainers. Like, duh, this works. Why don't you want it in here?
What are those programs that are the no-brainers?
I think it seems like you're onto something with Nucleus. It's all about education. Honestly, it's education and retraining of your mind. And you have to you have to influence positivity. You want people to become more positive, just like, hey, I can do this. So those kinds of training programs, obviously, like if you put it all together, say, look, you're going into this all well-rounded sort of program that includes mental training, restructuring of the way you think, things like that, and understand the power of that. Yeah. So you gotta give them a carrot, you know what I mean? Go, wait a minute, if I do this, I'll get that. That may be how it starts until they get that great self-sufficient thing where they're going, well, my future's great, my present's great because I'm building something. If you can, I think an all well-rounded program like that is what I'd like to see. I don't believe we have that.
Yeah. You told me earlier that success starts in the mind.
You can be successful in your mind and not have anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when I got out of prison, I didn't have anything. I lived in with my mom. I was fortunate. My mom was alive then. She had a garage, and I lived in my mom's garage. And eventually, I got myself a car. I drove an 89 Ford Ranger for 3 years. Even after Dave's Killer Band began. I didn't have anything, and I was loving it, but I was working my ass off, and it could have been anything because my mind was free, So getting that free mind, and really what that free mind is the absence of negativity.
Yeah.
It's that way, no resentments, no hate, no negativity at all. It's like nobody's perfectly positive, but success is the absence of negative emotions, And I became successful way before Dave's Killer Bread happened, and way before I had any money.
Yeah. I love that perspective. Now, you've been on multiple sides of, being an ex-con and going to work, being an entrepreneur, and then hiring people as well. Looking at the